Chapter 25. The Tellers. The 6 of them soon set out west, ready for a hike. But it wasn't even 3 minutes until the forest opened up into a small park with a baseball field sitting in it. Adam saw 2 sheltered dugouts, one down the first base line and one over by third base. He shook his head, thinking that if they had kept going for only 3 more minutes, the group could have slept more comfortably in them, as opposed to a dirty old hollowed-out tree. Just past the diamond was a road. Lake saw it, pointed, and wisely said, "All roads lead somewhere." The group could not argue with her logic. Adam tousled her curly hair, which was in dire need of a good brushing at that moment, and said, "You're getting wise in your old age." They all started walking up the road. It was made of loose gravel for about 100 yards, and then it transitioned into more of a worn-down and compact gravel for another short distance before the pavement began. The road curved, and, in about another half a mile, they walked into town. By now, most of them were famished, so they continued walking, passing a couple of clothing shops, a tavern, and an auto parts store, until they saw a small pancake house with a cheesy neon sign that read, "Reggie's." Jack said, "I could eat some pancakes." They all agreed and crossed the street. Entering it, they were greeted by an older lady straight out of the 50s. She wore her gray hair up in a bun, and she had a pencil sticking out of it that was wedged between her ear. "Well, howdy. You must be from the train." She then seated them at a long table for 6. Verona asked if everyone liked pancakes, and then she ordered for the whole table. 15 minutes later, 18 pancakes and 6 glasses of OJ were delivered to the rectangular table. While everyone dug in, Verona tried to talk to Malcolm. "What happened on the train? What happened to your parents?" In between bites, Malcolm picked up a pancake and violently ripped it into 2 pieces. Then he put the pieces back on his plate and intensely stared at Verona, and again said, "Sabotage!" And then more quietly, "Stick together." Verona questioned, "Were your parents sabotaged?" She didn't really know what that meant. She was thoroughly confused. Malcolm shook his head, and then he took turns looking at each member of the table. Malcolm turned to Jack, saying, "Steal it," then to Lake, "Touch the burning man." Next came Adam, "Hold him." As he made his way completely around the table, he glared at Lincoln, reached out his hand, and pointed his little finger right in the quiet boy's face, ranting, "Scream! Scream! Scream!" Over and over again, he yelled, "Scream!" The entire group stopped eating, as they were all transfixed on the strange little boy. What was their new friend talking about? None of it made any sense. Lincoln leaned over and asked Lake, "Is he crazy?" Even though Lincoln spoke softly, Verona overheard her brother and said, "He's just scared." But nobody knew for sure. The table was silent until Verona spoke again and said, "I'm going to call your parents." Verona patted Malcolm on his arm and then stood up and walked to the cashier counter, asking if they had a phone. The same woman who initially greeted them smiled and said, "Certainly." She lifted an old rotary phone from behind the counter and placed it in front of the youngster. Verona thought for a moment that their train must have traveled back in time. She had never seen a phone like this in her entire life. Verona looked at the hostess with bewilderment and asked, "What am I supposed to do with that?" The woman giggled, understanding the young girl's predicament. Offering to help, she asked, "What's the number, sweetie?" Before Verona could answer, Adam came over with a concerned look. He simply asked, even though he already knew the answer, "Is this a good idea?" He turned away from the adult Pancake House employee. With his back to the hostess, he bent down and whispered in Verona's ear, "We might get caught." Verona shot a look at Adam, but before she even said a word, Adam relented and nodded his approval. Verona pulled Malcolm's lanyard from her coat pocket and read while the hostess slowly spun the dial. Verona was very mesmerized by the old machine, but then snapped out of it when she was handed the receiver. The phone only rang once before someone answered in a gasp. "Hello?" It was a woman's voice. Verona assumed it was Malcolm's mother. Verona said, "Hello, Mrs. Teller?" The woman said, "Yes?" Verona said, "Thank God. We found your son Malcolm last night. He's okay. We found your phone number on his lanyard." The woman on the other end instantly burst into tears and started wailing. Verona continued, "Where are you?" Verona moved the phone a few inches away from her ear, and even over the noise of the restaurant, Adam could hear the woman crying. A couple of seconds later, a man's voice came over the phone. "This is Samuel Teller, Malcolm's father." He got right to the point. "Where are you? We can come to you." Verona considered the risk of adults figuring out that the 5 kids were traveling without adult supervision. She thought about setting up some kind of covert exchange so as to not give away that fact. She saw the concern of Adam's face, but knew that this was far too important for Malcolm and his family for her to try to be clever or play games. Besides, Verona thought, with everything going on, they probably won't even notice. "We're in town at the Pancake House. I think it's called Reggie's Pancake House," she told Mr. Teller. "Just Reggie's," interrupted the hostess. "Sorry to eavesdrop, sweetie, but the name of the restaurant is Reggie's, just Reggie's." Verona didn't even look at the woman, but simply corrected herself. "We're at Reggie's." The man replied, "Wait there. We're still on the train. We could leave in case Malcolm returned or someone brought him back. We will be there as soon as we can." Verona agreed to wait and awkwardly hung up the ancient phone, not knowing exactly how to do it, figuring there was no easy way through the woods. She thought that they would be waiting a while. She nodded at Adam, and they returned to the table. She sat down, looked at Malcolm, held his hand, and said with a smile, "Your parents are on their way." Malcolm seemed to understand and smiled at Verona. Adam looked both relieved and concerned, all at the same time, but he also knew it was the right thing to do, and realistically, there was nothing else they could have done.